A few years ago, I was talking to a new client of mine, and he told me something that kind of surprised me at the time, but every time I think about it since then, it just makes me laugh. So, we'd been working together for a few months, and when he first came to me, one of the first things he said was, I want to be the leader I've never had. He was a high level finance leader at the time, but an individual contributor, and he knew he had a promotion coming up. So, when he reached out for an executive coach, he said that he didn't have the kind of leaders that he wanted to follow, and that's who he wanted to be. And I thought, fantastic, he's going to be a great client. He was very proactive, he had a lot of self-awareness, and I really liked working with him. So after we'd been working together for about 2 to 3 months, we're on a call, and it's a pretty standard call. We had great rapport. We're working through some challenges. We're identifying what he really wanted from his career and how this promotion was serving that, and what his career steps would look like beyond that promotion, where he really wanted to go. One of the things he really wanted to focus on was, building his executive presence. And like we know that executive presence, it can kind of vary. What's deemed executive presence can vary from one organization to another, from one industry to another. And so we'd really dug into what did it mean in his current role in his current organization to feel like he was an executive, to feel like he was that person who was respected and put that gravitas and commanded that respect in a room, while like I said, showing up as a leader that he didn't feel like he had the models for. So we're on a call, we're kind of wrapping things up, and all of a sudden he said, Bana, I have a confession. And I thought, okay, I don't know what's coming here. And he said, I have been really mad at you for weeks now, maybe months. And I'm like, I don't know okay, like you're mad at me. What happened? Was it like I hadn't picked up on anything? We've been having really good calls. And I had no idea he'd been mad at me. And I said, okay, why? What happened? What can we do? How do we resolve this? And he said, when we first started working together, you told me something, and every time I think about it, I get so angry. I was like, okay, what did I say? And he said, you told me that what other people think of me is none of my business. It doesn't matter to me. And I was like, okay, that sounds like something I would say. Why? And he's like, I'm so mad because you're right. And I said, well, okay, that's why I said it. And kind of digging into this in the context, because he was a high performer, because he was so used to being able to control his own contributions, when it came to executive presence, when it came to how other people were perceiving him, what I told him was, you don't actually control what other people think of you. You can influence it. You can control how you show up and what you hope that they believe about you. But ultimately, the people you're interacting with, the people you're leading, your colleagues, your peers, if you go into another company, you change the culture, any of that stuff, you don't have control what other people choose to believe about you. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And once he kind of embraced this fact, like he said it to me kind of joking that he'd been mad at me, but he'd been mad at me because in his day-to-day interactions, as he's showing up wanting to control his executive presence, doing the work to show up as a leader he wanted to be, the leader he'd never had, he'd be in meetings and conversations and making presentations, and now that he had gotten this promotion, showing up in this leadership role and realizing that he didn't have that control that he wanted. And it's an interesting conversation because for so many high performing leaders, we get to where we are. We get to that certain level of achievement because we think, oh, we've controlled this, I've impacted that, I've had this control. And that's all an illusion. There's so many things that we don't control. And when we're able to let go of those things we don't control and focus on the things we do, like you can focus on how you show up as a leader, you can focus on how you communicate, you can focus on making sure that the messages you deliver, that you're addressing them, that you're delivering them in a way that your audience, regardless of what their needs or where they're showing up, that they can hear what you're saying. You're adjusting your message to the needs of your audience. You're communicating, collaborating in a way that gets people to buy in for their own reasons. We can control those things, but what other people choose to think about us, what other people choose to believe about why we said what we said, or what meaning something had, we don't control that. And for this particular leader, that was a moment that he really struggled with. And once he embraced it, he thanked me for that information. But it's a moment that I think back on now and go, there was a second there when he was mad at me, and I was kind of shocked. But I stand by that statement. We don't control what other people think of us, and it's kind of none of our business, because the more time we spend trying to control something that we don't control, the less time we're spending on those things that we actually can do that have an impact. So I guess what I'm asking now is, what are the things that you've given up that you realize you don't have control over, and you've given up trying to control them, and how has that changed how you show up as a leader? I'd love to hear your thoughts.